I was just wondering, with awareness is self-aware, so I was wondering in deep sleep, it doesn't seem to be self-awareness, but I'm aware when I'm in deep sleep. It doesn't seem to be any memory of it. So I was just wondering, how can you explain there's awareness when we're in deep sleep?
Well, if there's no memory of it, what are you referring to as deep sleep?
I don't know. Is it just...
Well, you're asking a question about deep sleep. So you're presumably asking a question about your experience. So what is your experience of deep sleep? If you say you're not aware of it, what are you asking about?
I don't seem to have the experience of deep sleep.
Well, why are you asking about it then?
Because I've been told I have deep sleep.
You're not asking about your trip to Australia last week?
No.
Because you didn't have it?
Yeah.
But you are asking about deep sleep. Why?
Well, because I go to bed and I wake up in the morning and the time looks different. I get told that I was sleeping, I was not aware. So...
How do you know that you were not aware? How do you know that you were simply not aware of anything? In other words, how do you know that deep sleep is the absence of awareness rather than the absence of the awareness of something?
So you can say that again?
How do you know? You presume that deep sleep is the absence of awareness. How do you know that it isn't simply the absence of the awareness of something, an object such as a thought or perception? In other words, how do you know that deep sleep isn't awareness without the awareness of thought or perception? That it is simply the space of awareness? I mean, did you experience any discontinuity in your experience, going from the waking state yesterday to the waking state today? Was there any discontinuity? Was there a break at any time in your experience?
I can't remember anything. Just look at the...
Well, just speak from your experience.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it doesn't feel like it's a break. It just feels the experience might be different. You feel fresh in the morning, but there's no break.
Yeah, there was no break. There was a continuity between the waking state yesterday and the waking state today. There was a continuity.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is it that continued? If you say there was no break in your experience, what is it that gives you this sense experience is continuous? What is continuous in your experience? Are any of your thoughts continuous?
No.
What about feelings and sensations?
No.
What about perceptions?
No.
And yet your experience continues, yeah? There is a continuity to your experience.
Yeah, but are you suggesting that sleep doesn't happen?
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm asking you, what is continuous in your experience? You said your experience was continuous.
Yeah.
No breaks.
Yeah.
And then you said no thought, sensation or perception is continuous.
Yeah.
So now I'm asking you, what is it then that is continuous in your experience?
Awareness.
Okay. Do you ever have the experience of awareness disappearing or being absent?
No.
Okay, so why do you presume that it does disappear or is absent if it's your experience that it never disappears? Now when I say it is your experience, who or what has the experience of awareness or being aware?
Me.
Me, yes, you what? What is the you that has the experience of being aware? What is the nature of that you?
It's self-aware.
It's awareness. So
Yeah.
the question is, when I say, do you ever have the experience of the absence of awareness? We could rephrase the question, do you, awareness, ever have the experience of the absence of yourself? Have you, awareness, ever thought, wow, I'm not present. I'm
No.
non-existent. I've disappeared. I've ceased to be.
Yeah, no.
Yes or no?
No. No.
No. In other words, if we ask awareness what its experience of itself is, and of course awareness is the only one that is aware. Awareness is the only one that knows anything about awareness, or indeed about anything else. So if we want to know about the experience of being aware or awareness, we have to ask the one that knows that experience. In other words, we have to ask awareness about itself. What is your experience of yourself? What is your experience? You, awareness, what is your experience of yourself? Do you ever experience yourself disappearing?
No.
Not what our thoughts tell us about what happens to awareness, but what awareness, the only one that knows itself, tells us about itself.
So I'm still a bit confused about what happens in sleep.
Thought and perception disappears. And because most of us have identified what I-awareness, because most of us have identified I-awareness with thought and perception. We think what I am is a collection of thoughts, feelings, sensations and perceptions. We think that when thoughts and perceptions disappear, I-awareness disappears. Therefore we presume that I-awareness disappears in deep sleep. We think that the world remains, but that I-awareness disappears. Whereas in fact our experience, that is, awareness's experience, is the opposite. Awareness's experience is that I remain, and the body-mind world disappears. That's your experience. What is it in between two thoughts? What is present? There is a discontinuity between two thoughts, yes? But nevertheless, experience is one smooth, continuous flow. So although thoughts are appearing and disappearing all the time, there is something that remains continuous throughout the presence of numerous thoughts, yeah? What is that?
Awareness.
Yeah, so what is it that is present between two thoughts?
Awareness.
What is it that is present between two dreaming states, which is just two thoughts or two images?
Yeah, awareness again.
That's deep sleep. The space between two thoughts. But the space between two thoughts doesn't have any duration, because time only appears to exist from the point of view of the mind or thought. So just as the gap between two thoughts is a gap that has no duration, so deep sleep has no duration. That's why deep sleep never seems to take any time. Is it not your experience that you fall asleep and wake up at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because this duration of deep sleep, which thought or the waking state mind says took 6 hours doesn't actually take 6 hours. It doesn't take place in time. It takes place in awareness. In fact, it doesn't take place in awareness. It is awareness. And awareness has no duration. It's not in time. It's eternal or ever-present.
Thank you.
You see, it's impossible to satisfactorily answer the question about deep sleep if we take the waking state mind's point of view of reality. Your question, the difficulty you are having or you were having, was because you believe that the waking state mind's version of reality is absolutely true. And the strange experience of deep sleep doesn't really fit into the waking state mind's model of reality. It's a kind of anomaly. But if we see that the waking state mind is a very partial view of reality, if we take consciousness's view of reality, if we start with consciousness rather than the waking state mind, and we explore experience from the point of view of consciousness, then it's like the three states of waking, dreaming, and deep sleep are like the waking state is like the 10 o'clock news. The dream state is like a drama, and the deep sleep state is when there's no film or news playing on your screen. But from the point of view of the screen doesn't go through any state when it passes from the news to the drama, and for the drama, when you turn the TV off, the screen is always in the same state. It doesn't pass through any state. There are no states for consciousness. There are only states of mind. And mind is a modulation of consciousness, a play of consciousness. So from the point of view of mind, there are three states of waking, dreaming, and sleeping. But from the point of view of consciousness, which is the only real point of view, because consciousness is all there is to experience, it is always in the same condition, just like your screen. Your TV screen is always in the same condition, whether the news is playing or the drama is playing, or whether nothing is playing on it. It's always in the same condition. Nothing ever happens to the screen. Nothing ever happens to consciousness. It never goes anywhere. It never passes through any state. It never becomes anything other than itself. It seems to be mixed with the qualities of experience. But it never actually acquires those qualities. It is just temporarily mixed with thoughts, feelings, sensations, and perceptions, and as a result seems to acquire a temporary name and form, or a limit. Just as the screen seems to acquire a limit when the movie begins. But in fact, the screen never acquires a limit. It's always in the same condition. Consciousness is like that. It's always in the same place, the same placeless place, the same pristine condition. The states flow through consciousness. Consciousness doesn't flow through the three states of waking, dreaming, and sleeping. It doesn't pass through any states. The states pass through it. In fact, that's not even right. They don't pass through it like one person might pass through this room. The movie doesn't pass through the screen. It is just a modulation of the screen. One kind of modulation makes the screen look like the 10 o'clock news. Another kind of modulation makes the screen look like a landscape. And another kind of modulation makes the screen look blank and empty. One sort of appearance makes consciousness look like the waking state. Another kind of modulation makes consciousness look like the dream state. And another kind of modulation makes consciousness look like a blank, empty state. Those are the three states of waking, dreaming, and sleeping. But they're all plays on and of consciousness, which never itself goes through any state.
So, I know awareness is outside of space and time, but I still can't imagine it just always having existed forever. I feel like it should have been created somehow, but I don't know. Was it created or has it just always been here?
When you ask the question, has awareness always been here? Your question could be reformulated. Has awareness always existed in time? So what you are presuming is that time has always been here. And the question is, has awareness been here all the time that time has been here? Yeah? So let's first investigate whether time has been here all the time. And that will enable us to know whether awareness has been here all the time. So, would you agree that the time consists of what we call the present, which is now, and then behind the now there is let's call it a vast space, which we call the past, going back indefinitely in one direction. And then there's a vast, in front of now, there is this vast space which extends indefinitely in the other direction. Yeah. Okay, so you know what the experience of now feels like.
Yes.
Yeah, because we're experiencing it now.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, try to leave the now and visit this place called the past. No, sorry, let's back up. Think of something that took place in the past, like breakfast this morning or anything you like. Okay. So with that idea or that image, you have the image of an event that took place in what we call the past. But that image or thought is taking place now. Yes? So the thought and the image about the past is not itself in the past. It takes place now. Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay. So forget the thought about the past or the image about the past. We want to actually experience the past itself. Yeah? Okay, so now, just for a moment, step out of the present and visit the past. Go there. Don't just think about it or imagine it. Go there.
I can.
Can anybody here, just for a moment, step out of the present and go into the past? Now, what about the future? Can you just, for a moment, you can think about the future. We can all think about dinner tonight, but that thought takes place now. So the thought about the future is not the future itself. We want to go, we want to experience the future. Yeah, because we're trying to experience time. Yes, and time is a movement from the past to the future. So we want to experience the past and experience the future. You've already discovered you can't go to the past. You've never experienced it. In fact, you can't ever experience it. Nobody here has ever experienced the past. What about the future? Try to go there.
You can't really.
You can't really, or you just
can't
can't?
at all.
You can't at all, exactly. You just can't. Don't you think that if it was really there, someone would have gone there by now? Just for a moment. I mean, someone. One, not just the 100 of us that are here, but one of the 7 billion of us. Or going back in time, I don't know how many humans have existed. don't you think someone for a moment would have actually left now and experienced this time called the past or the future? Nobody has ever been there. Nobody has ever come back from the past and said, I went there. Why not? Why do you think that might be?
Because the past, they were there when it was the present.
Because
They were there when the past was the present, but now they can't go back because they have to stay in the present? And
well,
the past doesn't exist anymore?
Well, you say the past doesn't exist anymore, but has the past ever existed? I mean, in order to know that something exists, we must experience it.
Yes.
In order to be sure that something exists and that we're not just imagining it. I mean, are you sure that fairies exist?
No.
No. Why not?
Because I've never seen one, and
You've never experienced one, nor have I, so it's safe to presume they don't exist until we experience one. Now, using exactly the same criteria, given that neither you nor I, nor anyone here, nor anybody ever has experienced this place or this time called the past, why do we believe so strongly that it exists? No one's ever been there.
it's just our memory of the present.
It's our memory, what we call memory, makes us think there is something called the past, but memory takes place in the present. The memory is an idea about the past, but when we look for the past, we never find it, just like when we look for the fairy, we never find it. So could it be that the past doesn't exist in the way we think of it?
Yes.
Could it be that the future doesn't exist when we think of it?
Yes.
How many nows have there been since we've been sitting here this afternoon?
Is that a trick question?
Alexander, you should know me by now. All my questions are trick questions.
One now.
One now. There's just been one now this afternoon. What about today? How many nows have there been today?
One now.
And what about in your lifetime? How many nows have there been in your lifetime?
One.
Could it be that this now is the only now there is? And it's not going anywhere? Could it be that it hasn't come from a place called the distant past? Could it be that it's not slowly travelling through this medium called time? And could it be that it's not destined to travel forwards
Yes.
endlessly? Could it be that this now, the only now that you and I have ever experienced, is the only now there is, and it's not going anywhere?
Yes.
Now, go back to your question. Has awareness existed forever?
No. Oh. It exists in the now.
Exactly. It is in the now. It is present in the now. Awareness hasn't existed all the time, because there is no time for awareness to exist in. When you fall asleep at night, you have a dream, and you dream that you have been on a 3-week holiday to a Caribbean beach. Yeah? So in your dream, it's the last day of the holiday. In your dream, you look back over the past 3 weeks, and you can discuss with Mum and Dad about the things that you've been doing, the swimming and the fishes and the snorkeling and the meals. You can discuss everything that happened in the last 3 weeks, yes? And you can describe what happened this morning and yesterday and the day before. And then when you wake up, you look at your watch again, you fell asleep 2 minutes ago. So the 3 weeks that you had in your dream took place in a moment in your mind in the waking state. It didn't take up any time. The dream itself, in the dream, the holiday seemed to take 3 weeks. But in waking state time, it took a moment. Now, could it be that what we are having now is a kind of waking state dream, which seems to last for 12 years or 55 years or 80 years, but in fact takes place in eternity, in the now, in this moment, which is not even a moment, it's because a moment is a fragment of time, but it takes place now. Could it be that what seems to be a lifetime from our point of view takes place in what's called eternity, that is the eternal now, not the everlasting now, not the now that lasts forever. There is no ever for the now to last in. There is just this now that is not going anywhere.
Yes. Yeah. I see how that's possible.
And then let's just go one step further. So we might then ask, well, okay, if there is no time, then now can't be a moment in time. Yes, because there's no time for the now to be a moment in. So what is this that we call now? The now is, we all know what we mean. When we say now, everybody knows exactly what we mean. But given that we've now discovered it's not a moment in time, what is it? What is now?
It's just now. It's like, it's not in time, but I can't give it a name, really.
Perfect. You can't give it a name, but given the words we've been using this week to try to give names to our experience, which you're quite right, can't really be named, but try to, in the context of our conversations this week, try to find another name for now.
Knowing?
Perfect. Knowing or awareness, yeah.
Okay.
Because now is that in which all our experience takes place. Doesn't all your experience take place in the now?
Yes.
That now is not a moment in time. It is pure knowing. It is awareness. It is dimensionless awareness, or in religious language it's called eternity. Remember, eternity doesn't mean everlasting in time. It means ever present now.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you a question about time, but perhaps a good way into it is to ask about memory and perception. Because you often say, including this morning, that time is an illusion. It doesn't really exist. But in a sense, it seems as if memory is in fact necessary for perception. And it would also seem as if memory takes place in the past. So I was wondering whether you could shed some light on the relationship between memory and perception.
Okay. Well, let's start with your statement. Memory is necessary for perception. A newborn infant doesn't have any memories, but it perceives the world. In other words, you can have perception without memory. An animal perceives the world, but as far as we know, it doesn't remember. Well, that's not quite true, but animals remember the sounds and faces. So, but the point I'm trying to make is you can have a perception without having a memory. A memory is always a thought. You can have a perception in the absence of thought. Animals perceive, but they don't think, as far as we know. Newborn infants perceive, but they don't think. But that's not really the central point of your question. The point of your question was, if I understand you rightly, doesn't memory confirm the existence of time? Is that...
yes, in a sense, intellectually I know it does not, but that seems to be the case.
Yes. Well, you're right, there seems to be. When we're watching TV, there seems to be a three-dimensional landscape. So I agree, there seems to be time, but we're not interested here in how things seem to be. Remember Einstein's definition of common sense. He said it's a series of prejudices that most people acquire by the age of 18. So we're not interested here in common sense or how things seem to be. I agree that memory would seem to indicate the existence of time. But when we explore it further and try to find the time that memory seems to refer to, we never find it. For instance, take the memory of breakfast. The memory comes in the form of a thought and or an image. And that thought or image suggests that breakfast took place in something called the past. Yeah? Now, try to find that past. Memory suggests it, but the memory takes place now. The memory itself, the experience of remembering, never takes place in the past to which the memory refers. So the memory suggests the past, but doesn't by itself prove it. Experience must be the test of reality. So memory suggests the past, we now try to go there. So now try to visit this place called the past. Try now to go to the past. I don't mean to think about the past, because the thought about the past takes place in the present. An image that seems to refer to the past takes place in the present. Actually go there in your experience. Can you go there?
No, I don't think I can.
Have you ever been there?
I should have anticipated that.
Sorry?
I should have anticipated that. No, I can't go to the past.
You can't go there. Has anyone ever been there? No one's ever been there. Not just us 85 eccentrics interested in non-duality, but if you asked any 7 billion, any of the 7 billion of us, have you ever actually been to this place called the past, or indeed the future? Everyone would have to acknowledge sooner or later that they had never been there. So maybe what we call a past is not what we think it is. Take the illustration I gave of the novel. The novel is the story of an 80-year-old woman's life. So the story, each page is stacked up in parallel, on top of one another. They are all present the entire contents of her life are simultaneously present now. The events that took place when she was 5 years old and the events that took place when she was 75-year-old place in the novel are present at the same time. They are stacked up in parallel. They are not spread out in series. However, the mind that reads the novel cannot access the events in her life simultaneously. It can only access them page by page. That's the limitation of the mind, not the limitation of the novel. So the mind accesses the story page by page and thinks, therefore, that the story takes place in time. Time is a reflection of the limitations of the mind which reads the novel. It is not an innate quality of reality itself. So all experience takes place now, in this now, and this now is the only now there is. Then isn't that your experience? Isn't it your experience that experience is always now? And how many nows have you experienced? For instance, while we've been sitting here, how many nows have you experienced?
Just this one.
I mean, does the question make sense? Is it 10 or 20 or thousands of nows? I mean, how many nows have taken place since we've been sitting here? Isn't it always the same now? And then extend that question to your whole life. How many nows have there been in your life? It's always the same now. Mm-hmm. And the now is not moving through or along a line of time, because as we've already said, this line of time, which consists of a space called the past and a space called the future, is never experienced. The now is not a fragment of a moment sandwiched between these two spaces, the past and the future. It is this, the only now there is, the eternally present now. And could it be that in a way the mind simply cannot understand, due to its own limitations, that what we call time is in fact eternity, that events are stacked up in series on top of one another in the eternal now, and that it is thought, or the finite mind, that spreads them out in time. In other words, that thought creates time out of eternity. Or, to put it another way, that when awareness looks at itself through the prism of the mind, it sees its own eternity as time. And that's not so strange. It sounds like a far-out idea, but actually when we think about it, and we notice, for instance, 1, none of us have ever experienced a past or a future. 2, all experience takes place now. 3, there's only one now. All these facts, and they are facts of experience, confirm not the conventional view of time, but confirm what I am suggesting here. Let me give you another analogy that I may have mentioned earlier this week. The person that goes skiing and puts on a pair of orange goggles. And to begin with, everything is orange. But then he forgets that he's wearing goggles because they fit very comfortably. He gets used to them. And he thinks that the orange colour belongs to consensus reality. He doesn't realize that it's the lens through which he is looking. So the mind, thought and perception, is the lens through which awareness is looking at experience. In fact, it's the lens through which awareness is looking at itself. So it is the activity of thought and perception that make eternity look like time and infinity look like space.
So if I understand you, both the memory and the perception are happening now.
Yes.
Okay. And the example you gave earlier about the infant, the newborn infant, I find it interesting. So that it's been a long time since I was a newborn infant. But when the infant experiences these sensations, whether it's, one day and then the following day there's another sensation, to the infant, all of these sensations are happening at the same time. Would you say that that's the case?
Yes. If the infant could articulate its experience, and if it was yet to be conditioned by our culture, and you ask the infant, when do all these sensations take place? The infant would just answer, now. And if you ask the infant, where do all your experiences take place? The infant would just answer, here. And as far as the infant was concerned, now would always be the same now, and here would always be the same here. In other words, now is not a moment in time, and here is not a place in space. I mean, isn't it? There are so many hints of reality in the finite mind's experience. Reality leaves traces of itself everywhere. The fact that all experience takes place now. The fact that all experience takes place here. That's an experience that most people don't consider significant. But it's hugely significant, that observation, that it's always now, and it's always here. Just that observation, if you follow it, will take us to reality. It is a hint of reality in the mind. There are many other hints. The experience of love, the experience of beauty. Our experience is littered with hints, traces of the beloved. Except we become accustomed, our culture gives us a banal interpretation of them. And so we overlook these hints or traces of reality. The experience of happiness. There are so many hints. Our culture has just given us the wrong interpretation of all these experiences.